Hey Jack, so this is that question, revision test 5, that I went through the other day with you and we chatted about. And this is the hardest one I could find in the AFT notes, and the exam probably won't have a question like this, hopefully not, but I'll make up one that I saw that was similar in the exam. And as you know, the 3 scenarios that we talked about and that are in the AFT notes, this is scenario 3. So the reason you apply that scenario is because we're past the 2 aerodromes of choice, and you have to make a calculation correction for the flight fuel to get back to, where is it, Alice Springs. In reference to doing this PNR, if you just did the calculation without that correction, the PNR would be past Cairns. So, I would be asking myself, is that correct? Is that not correct? We already know that Mount Isa is here. The question wants us to calculate the PNR from Alice Springs to Cairns. And so if we're at Mount Isa, we're going to have a period of time at which we're flying to the PNR. So we're flying out, normal operations, and then we're going to have to turn around, depress, and fly back to Alice Springs. So we need to find the point at which the flight fuel available will allow us to fly halfway to the PNR and return with all our reserves still intact. So what is that point? I believe you can just do that at any random waypoint. So we're at Mount Isa. I wouldn't use Tasha because that's only 61 nautical miles, but we could say already that Bidag is probably the PNR point, and I discussed that with you, and I did my flight plan to Bidag, and it works out to be the PNR point pretty much. So what AFT want is they assume that you're going to get given the answers. That's the old school method. What AFT assume is the old method, and they haven't really changed with it, and they tell you that you select one of the answers, you plan to that, and then you work your way back and you make the correction at the end of the calculation. The reason they give you the formula to find out where a location of the PNR is so for the standard exam now where we don't get any answers, it's all a type in. So your very last question will be a 5-mark PNR DP exactly like this. Hopefully it's an easier one. And so we are going to work through this one now. So looking at the 3 different scenarios, according to the notes, we've got a PNR calculation. This is scenario 1. When we're flying from an aerodrome to another aerodrome, and it's a flight plan or it's in flight. This is typically a flight plan, so we're going from Alice Springs to Cairns. We're on the ground and we calculate our PNR, and that's the typical standard way of doing it, and that's the first type of scenario. The second scenario is when you're in front of the 2 aerodromes that you're trying to plan your PNR to. So if we're just in front of Wabass, we want to work out our PNR from Alice Springs to Cairns. The third scenario is the scenario that we'll have to use for this revision test 5, and that's when you're past the aerodromes of choice. That's the first aerodrome. So we're somewhere here at Mount Isa. We want to calculate where the PNR is to get us back to Alice Springs if we were to suffer any sort of engine failure or depress. Now, you can see scenario 1 is your standard scenario, so it's just a normal flight plan. Pick a point for your PNR. You can use the formula to guess where your PNR is. That formula is your flight fuel divided by your SGR out plus home. So if that's normal operations, 10 and then your flight plan home will be abnormal, so that would be depress 13 or engine failure 11. If you are scenario 2, you have to take into account the normal flight fuel to fly and then get over your Alice Springs point and then continue to your PNR, depress, engine failure out, fly in the abnormal config back to Alice Springs from a PNR point. So that would be your flight fuel minus this distance times the normal ops divided by the SGR out plus home. Scenario 3, which we have for this question, we are past our first aerodrome. So what we do is our flight fuel minus the distance times your abnormal. So it's your abnormal section divided by SGR out plus home. So in the actual question for this one, as you would have seen, they use your flight fuel, which was 11,050, take, I think it was 414719, which is the distance, 275 times 13 over 23. Normal, depress. From this equation here, which is the present position to your PNR calculation, the distance should work out to be 275 nautical miles from Mount Isa. So from Mount Isa, this distance should be 275 nautical miles. Now if you're using the map, you should find that BIDAG, where is it, is real close to 275, so I would just select that as my PNR. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a flight plan from Mount Isa, normal operations, flight level 330.07 Mach, sorry, 0.079 to BIDAG. From this point, we suffer a depress. We go down to flight level 130 and we fly all the way back to Alice Springs. We plan that and we find out how much fuel it's going to use, and then we calculate the difference from the fuel available and the flight plan fuel that we've just calculated, and then we use the corrections to find out and adjust the PNR location from BIDAG. The first thing I'm going to do for this question is draw a bit of a picture. So I know that we need the PNR from Alice Springs. We're at Mount Isa. We're going to do our PNR BIDAG and then YBCS Cairns. So we're going to, our present position is here. We flight plan out PNR. We're going to return at 130 flight level, land at Alice Springs, and we're trying to find out the flight fuel from here to all the way back Alice Springs and compare it to our flight fuel available. Now we know it's a depress, so we're going to have to use the abnormal charts for the depress, flight level 130. We're also going to have to use the normal config and flight levels for Mach of 0.79, flight level 330. And so now I'm starting to draw the picture and ask myself, okay, what pages am I going to be using? Have I missed anything? What is the big picture? It's a PNR, so what we're going to do straight away is find out the flight fuel available. So the flight fuel available is the current fuel from overhead the position, is 13,300. We're going to take away our fixed reserves and our holding reserves and any sort of reserves that we require. Since it's a depress, we know that aerodromes have to be acceptable, so we don't need to account for any tempo or intos, and the flight question exam that you'll get in the exam will most likely be acceptable as well. And we need to get rid of the fixed reserve. Depress has a fixed reserve, so that is 2250. No weather, no traffic holding because it's abnormal, and we're in flight, so we don't include the taxi fuel either. So that should work out to be 11,050. Now this figure is the amount of fuel that is available for us to use to fly to the PNR, depress, and then fly back from the PNR position to our point of Alice Springs. Straight away with the flight fuel, we can work out our landing weight, which will be our gross weight at the time minus our flight fuel available. So that will be gross weight of 74,400 minus our fuel available, because we're planning to burn that. So we'll be landing with our reserves intact, and our landing weight should be 63,350 kgs. With landing weights, it's to the nearest 10 tons. We've only got 3, 50, 60 and 70 tons. This is below 65, so I'm going to use the 60 ton weight. It's a depress, so you should start to memorize that a depress is always 13 mins descent. It's 520 kilos, and the distance will be either 49, 50 or 51. In our case, it's the 60 ton, that's 70, and that's the 50 ton, which you'll never get. So I already know our distance is going to be 50 air nautical miles, and I'll just probably write that into the flight plan already. From this point, I'm going to start filling in the flight plan sectors and the information that I know. So for instance, we're at our present pos, going to our PNR, which is BibDag. From BibDag, I'm going back to our present position, MA, Mount Isa. Mount Isa, I'll go to top of drop, and then we'll go to YBAS, and we also got our approach and landing. I know top of drop to YBAS, I always put in this arrow here for the approach. I always do the fuel zone, fuel of 400. And from here, we can also start to fill in the rest. So flight levels from our present position to our PNR, we're at 330, flight level 330, 0.79. From BIDAG, our PNR, we're going depress, so we always know that's 13. And that's always 0.59. The other thing we can find from the map, which we should have handy at that time, is our tracks. So we're at Mount Isa, we're going to BIDAG. We know that is a heading of 051, or a track. On the way back, it's going to be 230, 231. So just go 231, and it's a fairly straight line all the way. I'm going to use 233, 233 for this one. And then from there, I'm going to extract the winds, because we already know the flight level we're at, and we've got a fairly good route knowledge now, so we know these winds are pretty good. So this is Alice Springs to Mount Isa, and then Mount Isa to Townsville, and so that's broken our plan up really nicely as well, because we're going to, from our present position, which is Mount Isa, to pretty much Townsville, which is up this way, so it's pretty much even there. So PNR location's good. We'll use the winds for this sector here, 330, so we'll use 340, and I also use the actual magnetic variation as well. So this line here should be 6 degrees east. So I'd take 6 off there, so 294. 294, and it is at 35 knots. And the ISA temperature is 41, sorry, the temperature is minus 41, the ISA is minus 52, so we're actually warmer by 11 degrees. Just doing the same thing back. We're now at flight level 130 on the way back, so we always use 185 for the depress. So we're going from our PNR to Mount Isa, so that'll be 360. So we should be 354 at 5 knots. Just be careful with that one because it's such a low number, you might put it as 50 because most of the winds are always as 50 knots, 100 knots. They'll try and trick you with that. The next one is from Mount Isa. So Mount Isa to our top of drop, 310. Magnetic variation in that area is 5 degrees, so I'll use 305. 305 at 30. Same with our descent, 305 at 30. Now the Mount Isa was 354. We got where is it? 3546, so that's plus 15 ISA, so we're a lot warmer there. Top of drop will be plus 14, 7, 21, so that's 14. ISA doesn't matter for the descent. And from here, then I'm going to work out my TASs straight away. Now I've done this prior, and I do it on the calculator the same way we went through it before. So you just get the flight level, times it by 1.98, minus 288, which takes into account the 15 degrees ISA Kelvin. I then subtract it by 11, so you do the inverse. This is a positive 11, I subtract 11 from that figure. It should be around negative 200 and something. From then, I then convert it to a positive number. I square root it, and then I times it by 39. Once I get that figure, I times it by 0.79 minus 1, and I should get a TAS of 469. Same thing for this one. I'll just do this one quickly. So that would be 1.98 times flight level 130 minus 288 minus 15. You take that figure and you make it a positive. You square root it, times it by 39, then times it by 0.59 minus 1, and you should get 382. The next one's easy because we know if the ISA is warmer, it should be faster TAS, and since this ISA is colder by 1 degree, it will be 1 knot slower. Then I go through and I do all the winds. So I'll do one wind at a time. Track, wind. So you set up your TAS on the top of the whiz wheel. Then 294 at 35 knots. With the track, work out the crosswind and headwind, tailwind component and the ETAS within 5 degrees. For this question, the TAS is 469. So 469. The wind is 294. 294. I then get my pencil and I put in the 35. And I turn it to the heading of 052. Now we should have about an 18 knot tailwind and a 31 knot crosswind from the left. Now if I go here, I'll have a look. 31, it's 4 degrees. I'm not going to take into account the ETAS, but I'll write down the 18. So I do that for all the wind calculations and then work out the ground speed straight away. Now I've done this equation example already with you, so I'll just type that or write that all in. Our TAS minus our wind component, or plus if we have to, will give us our ground speed. From this point as well, you can start to put in your distances, and you could have put in the distances actually when you had the map out at the start when you were doing the tracks and figuring out where your flight plans were. So we know from Mount Isa to BDAG that the distance is 256 miles. Now our point of return, our PNR, which we've said is that distance plus the distance from Alice Springs to Mount Isa is the PNR distance we're going to be working out. So from the PNR back to Mount Isa, which was our present time, it's the same distance, 256. From before, I told you about the descent. That's always 13 and the fuel's 520, and this is a 60-ton one, so the air distance will be 50. From here, what you could do is work out the actual ground distance travelled. Now, it is a headwind, so we should travel less than 50. It's ground speed, or what you do here is 13 divided by 60 times 7, and it should be minus 2. 50 minus 2, we're looking for 48. Now, the distance from Mount Isa to Alice Springs is 363 nautical miles minus 48 will give us our remaining distance of 315. Now that we have all our distances, we can use this with our SGR to find out the mid-zone weights. So I could start going straight into Flight Plan Book now and working out mid-zone weights. So our start zone weight was 74400. The fuel was 13. Now I'm going to use 0.79. I'm going to use 9.5. Actually, for simplicity, I'm just going to use 10 times. So we know AFT uses 10 kgs per nautical mile of fuel burnt, and then they add the differences for the headwinds and the tailwind component. So if you have a tailwind, you take a nautical mile off for anything over 50. If it's a headwind by 50, they add an extra kilo of fuel to burn, as well as the weights. But it's always going to be roughly around 10. So what we'll do is 256 times 10 divided by 2 and take it off our 74,400. And that should give us a mid-zone weight of 73 tons. So I just write the 73 there and I dash it just in case. So at the end, I always check it. If not, then I redo it. So now we go into the blue book. We go into our flight level 330.079 and we get the fuel flow. So now you're in the flight planning book. Mach 0.79, we are flight level 330 and our mid-zone weight was 73 tons. So 73, we've got 74, 72, we're going to average these two. So 1410 plus 1374 divided by 2 times by 3 engines times by ISA deviation, which was plus 11. So let's use 4. Times 1.04, 4%, it's closest to 12 because every 3 degrees we add 1% of fuel, and that will give us our fuel flow. Fuel flow should roughly be 4344. From there, what I'm going to do is I get the distance, I divide it by the ground speed, That should give you a figure of about 0.6, something like that. I times it by the fuel flow, and then I get the fuel zone fuel. So the actual fuel we're going to use, that should be 2283. I take this figure and I subtract it from 74,400, and I get my end zone weight, which should be 72,116. 72,116 plus your start zone weight divided by 2, and I will be checking to make sure that's within 1 ton, and you should get roughly 73,500 or something like that. So that's checked. We've checked it, we know it's correct. We then go into our point of PNR to Mount Isa. We're now on flight level 130, so we're abnormal pages of the blue book. Low level altitude, the green section of my book, it's always going to be this page for the flight depress. So flight level 130, low level, abnormal. What you got to do first, work out the mid-zone weight. So the mid-zone weight will be 256 times 13 divided by 2 minus this weight here, your end zone weight. And that should give you an end zone weight of a mid-zone weight of 70 tons. So we're going to go into the 70 ton column, flight level 130, it's 1569 times 3 engines, times we have 15 degrees, so that's 5. 15 divided by 3 is 5, so we times the fuel figure for the 70 here, so 1569 times 3 times 1.05, and we get a fuel flow of 4942. Which seems correct because it should be more than the normal ops, 4942, and we're traveling roughly the same distance. 4942, I do the same here, distance divided by your ground speed should give me about 0.66. The reason I do this is, if the question asks for time, I can go 0.66 times 60 and it gives me my ETA for each sector. If it's not asking for my time, I just use that 0.66. I times it by the fuel flow, which will be in the memory function of the calculator. So I go 0.66 after I've done that calculation times memory, so M plus, and that will give me my zone fuel 3286. Same thing, I take that figure, I subtract it from our previous end zone weight, I should get 68,829. 68,829 plus your start zone weight divided by 2 to confirm your mid-zone weight was correct, should get about 70.3. So yeah, that's correct. We do the same procedure now for our last sector. You know, we're depress, we're Mount Isa at the top of drop. So it's just our distance 315 times 13 divided by 2, take your start zone weight. That will give you your estimated mid-zone weight of 67. We're using the same flight page as before, 67, so where we're going to be in between these two, we take the average of 1553, 1537, divided by 2, we check. Always when you divide it by 2, just check, is it in the correct? It should be like what, 45 times 3, we got 3 engines, times your ISA deviation of 14, so I'd go 5 again, so 1.05 times 3 times that figure, you get your fuel flow of 4917. Does it look right? We're at the same flight level, we're a little bit lighter, it should be less. Yes, it is less. 4917, same thing, distance divided by your ground speed. You can work out your ETA if you want. You should get about 0.84. 0.84 times 60 gives you ETA, or your sector time there. 0.84 times your fuel flow for an hour will give you your flight segment fuel of 4141. 4141, does it look correct? Okay, our ground speed's 374 an hour. We've done 317, so it's nearly an hour. 0.8 sounds correct. What have we got? Fuel flow 4917. Yep, that's checked. We checked the mid-zone weight, so 68829 minus 1441 should give us 64687. Plus your start zone divided by 2, check that 67, it should be. Now, from there you can go subtract 520 minus 400 and you get your landing weight. You can check that with the landing weight we calculated before. Your landing weight minus the gross weight will give you the total fuel used that you've burnt, or you can add up all these figures. I generally do the landing weight minus your gross weight at the start instead of adding all these figures up. Now you should get planned of 10,633. We worked out before the fuel available was 11,050. The difference there is 417 kilos, so it's not much, 417. And we divide it by our SGRs. Now the SGRs that I'm going to use are the ones to my PNR position and then the one from my PNR to MA, the closest one. So present position to PNR, PNR to MA. So what we do is we just get our fuel zone, that figure, you divide it by your distance, and that should give you your SGR. So 2283 divided by 256 should give us an SGR of 8.91. 3286 divided by 256 should give us an SGR of 12.83. We add these two, divide it by the difference. Should be 19 nautical miles. Now, this is the fuel available. This is what we've planned. Because the fuel available is more, it means we can fly further. So we'll be adding this to our PNR location. So the PNR that we used is 256 from MA plus 19. You should get 275. Plus the distance from MA to Bass is 363. PNR location is 339 nautical miles from Alice Springs. That should be the correct answer.